2023 has been quite a packed year for video games, with lots of good and bad video games released in one year. There were so many games to play last year that I barely played any. Lol. Except this one game that I beat recently, and man was it an interesting ride. So hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video I'll be talking about Alan Wake 2 and what makes it stand out from other games that came out in 2023, as it certainly is one of the most interesting games I've played. Without further ado, please hit the like and subscribe if you guys enjoy this video, and let's get right into this. I remember playing the first Alan Wake game for the first time just a few months back, and even though I personally didn't find the gameplay all too enjoyable, I still really liked that it felt so unique and different to games that I've played before. It had a very interesting and unique concept and a storyline full of thrills. I was really curious where they would take this series with the second game, and I'm surprised to say they went with a much more darker and sinister tone with Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 plays more like a survival horror game, similar to the likes of Resident Evil, with a resource management system taken right from those games. It's quite a departure from the action-adventure game that the first Alan Wake was. This is a bad thing about this game in my opinion, because even though survival horror games are great and all, I couldn't help but feel like I've already played this type of game many times while playing Alan Wake 2. This is especially more evident during the sections involving Saga Anderson, as it just felt like a cheap Resident Evil clone at times. It's just that I expected something different. Of course, they added interesting new mechanics to make things a little different from a typical survival horror, like the mind plates that could be used to solve active cases of the game on the case board. The case board could be solved by finding evidence from exploring the world and progressing to the main story, and matching it up with relevant questions that are related to the case. It acts like a nice puzzle minigame, but I'm not gonna lie, a fucking 3-year-old can put these together. It was way too easy, which kind of took away a lot of fun from this newly introduced mechanic. By the end, I was more exhausted by this mechanic than intrigued. Other than that, you could also read manuscript pages from the story Alan is writing called The Return, listen to songs on the radio, watch TV commercials found across each area, and use profiling, another new gameplay mechanic where Saga can use her intuition and knowledge of the case to get into the head of each character in question, which would help unlock more evidence and answer more questions about the game's overarching plot. I wouldn't even call this a mechanic more so than just a simple button tap which is followed by a cutscene that reveals all the answers. It's pretty disappointing in my opinion, as I think it's a pretty cool new feature that could have been expanded way more. There was way more that could have been done with it to make it more engaging from the gameplay perspective. Along with this, you could also upgrade your weapons by collecting the manuscript pages spread across each explorable area in the game. These are the things you could do with Saga Anderson, who is a second main protagonist in this game alongside Alan Wake, who literally looks like John Wick for some reason. Now, I'm not really a fan of dual protagonists in video games. A lot of the times they are not really handled well in my opinion, as the game loses a lot of its focus narratively and the characters are not well fleshed out, as the game is trying to do too much to fit these two characters in. That one character might end up getting way more screen time than the latter. This is especially true with the new Sony sequels like God of War Ragnarok or the new Spider-Man 2 game, and also The Last of Us Part 2. Luckily, in the case of Alan Wake 2, I thought it was really well balanced with the plot giving enough time to flesh both characters out. You could also switch between both characters at any time between the story sections. Granted, you find the janitor's closet in order to switch. Yeah, I don't know why they chose a janitor's closet of all places in order to switch. Could have just been a toilet. You could have switched as well as taking a massive shit. You know, just saying. This is great because if you're bored of one long section of a particular character, you could easily switch to the other to change things up. I think more games should learn from Alan Wake 2, as it gives the players more choice in how they want to play through the main story. I think The Last of Us 2 would be much less hated if it had this feature, as a lot of players were frustrated that they were forced to play the entire Abby segment after Ellie's. But these are two very different games we're talking about here, so I don't know if it'll work as well in The Last of Us Part 2. Anyway, getting to the Alan Wake portion of the game, playing as Alan Wake is clearly the most memorable out of the two, as the game clearly has some of its best moments here. I was blown away when we first set foot in the rainy New York night at the Dark Place. The Dark Place being the area that we'll spend most of our time as Alan. Each level is so meticulously well designed and crafted, everything just feels so much more eerie and disturbing here. From the subway tunnels to the abandoned hotel, the visuals and art direction truly shine here in making the game feel that much more immersive. There are some sections in this game that are truly mind-blowing and something that I've never seen before in a video game. Especially the entire Alan Wake musical section, which I could just talk about and praise all day. Another thing I'd like to add that the Alan Wake death screen is genuinely one of the most terrifying things I've seen. It scared the absolute crap out of me when I first saw it, And it still does, I shat my pants, literally. I'm not joking. A lot of Alan Wake's gameplay is similar to Saga Anderson. It's exactly like the first game. You have the flashlight to repel away and destroy the dark armor sort of thing that is protecting the Taken, who are the main enemies you face in this game, and also in the first game. You also have tools like the flares and flashbang grenades that help with the same purpose. And then you can use the guns to take them down. The main gun you get is a standard pistol, of course, but you can unlock different weapons such as the pump action shotgun, the sawed off shotgun, and the crossbow by exploring each open area in the game and solving various puzzles. You also have the nursery rhyme puzzles as Saga Anderson that can help you unlock charms that grant you more health, and the Alex Casey lunchboxes too that you can find dotted across each area. The Taken this time around are a lot more difficult to face, especially in the dark place, as one hit from them could do a lot of damage, and before you know it, you're done in 2 strikes. Hence, you'd have to avoid facing some of them to conserve your ammo and health, just like in Resident Evil. You could also shoot their critical spot indicated by the bright red light in order to slow them down and do more effective damage. To heal up your health, you can use painkillers, medical kits, and also stand underneath a lamppost to slowly regain your health, which is exactly like the first game. You can save your game by finding these coffee thermos and also transfer some of your items into the shoebox if you're carrying too much. Again, taking huge inspiration from the Resident Evil games. With Alan Wake's campaign specifically, they also introduced Words of Power, which are basically skill points that you can use to unlock new skills as Alan. You can come across these by finding a round wall of white text and flashing some light on it using your flashlight, and it's pretty cool to find these across a dark place. Anyway, the intricate level design in the Alan Wake sections are complemented by the 2 gameplay traversal mechanics introduced in the game. One being the lamp, which can be used to collect a bright light from a light bulb and also transmit it back. Doing so would help carve out new paths across a dark place that would otherwise be blocked, as collecting or transmitting the light source would change parts of the area that were lit by the light bulb. I really like this new mechanic as it added more fun and engagement in traversing the depths of the dark place. Also, my 10-year-old brain thought it was really cool to collect and throw a light like it was some goddamn toy. Another mechanic that was introduced was the plot board that could be found in the writer's room, which acts similarly to the Mind Place, where you can listen to music on the radio just like in the Mind Place. You can also see some footage of Alan whilst writing Return, which is the book he's writing to escape the dark place. You can see him absolutely losing his shit the more and more he writes. The pure mental dread and insanity of Alan Wake is captured so well by the voice actor, Matthew Porretta, and also the facial expressions of the face model Ilka Willi. You can also watch the Alice Wake documentaries, who is the wife of Alan Wake and a recurring character from the first game. You could see her descent into madness as she is tortured by Mr. Scratch or the Dark Presence, who is the main antagonist of this game, which causes her to make this documentary in the first place. These clips really add so much more depth to both these characters and the overall story. I actually ended up liking Alice way more here than the first game, which is one of the main criticisms I had with the first game as she felt very one-dimensional. Getting back to the plot board, it's an interesting feature that allows you to change the scene that you're in, by finding plot elements to use by listening to echoes, which are basically the visions of ideas that Alan has about the story that he's writing. My main criticism with the echoes is that you have to be within a certain range of the echo in order to hear all of it, meaning that you can't just go to another room or a little further away from the main scene while listening to all the dialogue, as doing so would completely stop the echo and you have to listen to it all over again. It's really frustrating, especially if I want to explore the nearby area whilst listening to the dialogue, as I have to stand still just to listen to a shitload of exposition, which makes me want to blow my fucking brains out, to be honest. They really should have come up with a better way to deliver all this information to the player. Through listening to these echoes, you unlock different plot elements which you could use to change the scene entirely, which unlocks a new path in order to progress through the area that was otherwise blocked by the other scenario. I actually really like this mechanic. It felt more unique and interesting than the caseboard and had some cool puzzle solving elements to it, to really make you think sometimes. My main criticism with Alan Wake 2's gameplay is that it significantly toned down the action from the first game. Like, it takes hours before you finally put into a combat situation, and a lot of the initial hours of the game I just spent walking and listening to lots of dialogue and exposition. Like, seriously, I have not walked this much in real life than the amount of walking there is in Alan Wake 2. This could leave a lot of people disappointed, especially if you're looking for a more action-packed gameplay like the first game. I mean, even Alan Wake 1 didn't have the best gameplay, but I honestly thought it was more fun to play through. I know people would say that the story of these games are so intriguing that you could excuse the weaker gameplay, but I heavily disagree, as gameplay matters a lot in a video game. It's called a video game for a reason. Like, seriously, I'm not watching a fucking movie full of cutscenes and walking. This is not a Kojima game. I have a similar complaint with the modern Sony exclusives, but that's a different can of worms entirely, which I don't even want to get into right now. Now let's get into the strongest part of Alan Wake 2, that being the main story. I don't really want to give away major spoilers, but just give my general thoughts and overview on it. And to be honest, it's hard to explain the whole story of Alan Wake anyway, as it's very complex and hard to follow at times.
It's returned, because we returned.
You didn't have to cut me off. We were nothing.
There are other YouTubers who have done a much better job at explaining the whole story. Content creators like Gingy, who have done a good job at simplifying a lot of what happens in the plot of Alan Wake 2. Please make sure to go check him out, especially if you want a more in-depth explanation as to what exactly happens in the story of Alan Wake 2. The basic premise of Alan Wake 2 is that there are two narratives. One is of Saga Anderson and the other is of Alan Wake. Both have a completely different vibe and feel to them, which is one thing I really liked. Saga's story involves investigating the cult murders in a town called Bright Falls in Washington, which is the same town the first game takes place in, along with her partner Alex Casey, who's literally Max fucking Payne, as he shares the same voice actor as Max Payne, James McCaffrey, who's unfortunately passed away at the time of recording this video. It's really sad. I'm gonna miss him and his contribution to not just Max Payne, but video games in general. May he rest in peace. Sam Lake is the face model of Alex Casey. He was also the face model for the original character model for Max Payne with the iconic facial expression. I'm guessing this is an early tease of what a Max Payne remake would potentially look like, which I don't know how they're gonna progress with anyway, given McCaffrey's unfortunate passing. Nonetheless, I wasn't really a fan of Saga Anderson initially, as she felt too bland and one-dimensional, but as you find out more about her personal life and how the story written by Alan Wake affects her, I couldn't help but root for her. Saga's story is more beginner-friendly to newcomers to the Alan Wake series, as it's basically an outsider looking into and finding out more about the messed up world of Alan Wake. So you don't technically need to play the first game in order to understand the story of this game, but I highly recommend you do so, as you'll miss out on the finer details of things. There are other casts of characters you encounter in this story too, along with lots of familiar faces from the first game, like the old gods of Asgard, Thor and Odin, who are absolutely adored in this game, and Rose, the creepy stalker waitress. There's also Sheriff Tim Breaker, who is a cousin of Sheriff Sarah Breaker from the first game. It's a shame that she's not present in this game though. Also, Sheriff Tim Breaker looks exactly like the main protagonist from Quantum Break, another game made by Remedy. And this game being part of the Remedy shared universe along with Control, it wouldn't be far-fetched that Remedy is trying to connect some of their previous games to this universe without having to hold the license rights for those games anymore, as even Alex Casey closely resembles Max Payne. Some characters from Control, Remedy's previous game, also make an appearance in Alan Wake 2, so it was pretty cool to see them. Anyway, overall the Saga storyline I did like, even though the gameplay sections were a chore to get through. I loved her chemistry with Alex Casey as partners, and her character arc in general. I do think the story does have slight pacing issues, mainly being at the beginning few chapters and also the section in Watery, but it does pick up quite well by the climax. Getting to the Alan Wake storyline, the basic premise is Alan Wake needs to write a new story in order to alter reality and escape the Dark Place, which is a dark, empty and horrifying dimension where he gets stuck at the end of the previous game trying to save his wife Alice Wake. This is where a lot of the story gets pretty confusing and hard to follow, especially if you haven't played the first Alan Wake game. However, Remedy does a good job in making it make a little bit of sense by the end of it. There aren't as many characters that you meet and interact with in the Alan Wake storyline, but some characters from the first game do show up, and it was really great to see them make an appearance. For diehard Alan Wake fans like me, this story would be a treat. However, I won't say you'd have much of a good experience as a complete beginner to the Alan Wake franchise. It's still a cool segment to play through nonetheless, and the cinematic and in-game visuals layered together are really worth experiencing. Alan Wake 2's story is a highlight of the game, and it is the main reason that drew me into this franchise in the first place. I do think there are a few plot holes and some unexplained questions that I had from the first game, which I hope are explored and wrapped up in the sequel. Now I can't end this video without talking about the absolute slapping music, more specifically, this fucking banger. Okay, that's enough. I'm really sorry if you're deaf in 1 year after this, guys, but man, this song goes hard. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but when this song shows up in the game, I couldn't help but start dancing. It's just another vibe, man. There's also other music in the game by independent artists that I really liked. One of them being Wide Awake by James and Lost at Sea by Gene Castell. You can check these tracks out on Spotify. Please show these artists some love, guys. It's really a shame that Alan Wake 2 didn't win the Best Music category at the Game Awards because I felt that it really deserved it. Alan Wake 2 probably has the best soundtrack from a video game I've heard in quite a while, and I really appreciate what it did with the music as it also plays an important role in a video game in setting the scene and tone of the entire game. Thanks to all the artists for making these bangers that I listen to on repeat. Overall, Alan Wake 2 is one of the most interesting and unique games of 2023. I enjoyed my time with this game, granted that I do have criticisms for its weak gameplay, its pacing issues with its story, and a few loose plot holes. I do think it's still a game worth experiencing at least once. However, I'd recommend playing this game on a PS5 or a pretty beefed up PC, because in my playthrough for the most part, the game really struggled to load textures, hence making it look like a fucking blurry PS2 game. This is mainly because I didn't meet the recommended PC requirements as my VRAM or virtual RAM was too low. Hence it did affect my experience quite a bit. Nevertheless, I'd highly recommend you play this game for the gorgeous visuals and art direction, excellent storytelling and fantastic acting. But if you're not a fan of story-focused games and primarily care more about fun gameplay, you'll be pretty disappointed, as the game leaves a lot to be desired from the gameplay point of view. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a like, share and subscribe if you did, and tell me what you guys think of Alan Wake 2 in the comments below and whether I have convinced you enough to give it a shot. Thank you guys for all your support, and I really want to focus more on this channel for this year. I plan to do more content compared to last year and really focus on growing as a channel and as a content creator, and I hope you guys are willing to follow me on this journey. That's all for this video. Hope this new year brings about more exciting challenges and opportunities for growth for all of us. But anyway guys, I'll see you most likely in the near future. See ya!